Rising music star David might be a murderer. On September 8, 2025, workers at a Hollywood tow yard noticed a foul odor coming from a 2023 Tesla registered to singer David Anthony Burke, aka David, the 20-year-old artist behind viral hits like Romantic Homicide and Feel It. The car had been abandoned in the Hollywood Hills after it was impounded days earlier, but when police opened it around noon, they discovered a decomposed body wrapped in plastic and stuffed into the front trunk. The remains were so badly decayed that identification wasn't possible on the spot, as the LAPD quickly handed the case over to homicide detectives and the county coroner. At the time of the discovery, David was actively on his Withered World Tour, posting on social media and preparing for upcoming shows, making it unclear whether he had any connection to the car's contents. Authorities have not released the victim's identity and emphasized that it's unknown if David himself is involved in the case, which remains an active homicide investigation. Morbid Facts, Part 105. In 1941, Soviet archaeologists wanted to open up the tomb of Timur, aka Tamerlane. He was a Turco-Mongol conqueror from the 14th century who is often regarded as one of the greatest military leaders of all time. However, locals urged the Soviets not to do so since it was believed that opening the tomb would curse the world. This was mainly due to the inscription on his tomb, which read, "When I rise from the dead, the world shall tremble." And inside his casket, there was another mysterious note that read, "Whoever disturbs my tomb will unleash an invader more terrible than I." But despite the warnings, Joseph Stalin ordered for Tamerlane's body to be exhumed. Just 3 days later, Adolf Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa and invaded the Soviet Union. William Hitler despised his uncle Adolf and fled from Germany to fight for the US during World War II. William's sons also agreed to never have children in order to kill off Hitler's bloodline. During World War II, Michelangelo's statue of David was encased in bricks to prevent damage from bombs. On Christmas in 1914, during World War I, the British and Germans laid down their weapons. They crossed over no man's land and joined each other to celebrate the holiday. They exchanged food, played games, and even attended burials for each side. It was seen as a symbolic moment during the brutal war. In 2017, a billionaire from Brazil announced that he was gonna bury his Bentley for his afterlife. After receiving a lot of online hate for his wasteful decision, he revealed that it was simply a publicity stunt for organ donations. He said people bury things that are much more valuable than cars and nobody seems to care. Patty Mallet became pregnant at age 17 and was pressured by multiple people to abort the baby, but she refused. That baby was Justin Bieber. The Titanic fired 8 emergency flares before it sank. A ship in the area saw the flares and that the boat looked uneven in the water. But the captain didn't believe that the rockets were fired in distress, so he didn't take action. If he had, all of the Titanic's passengers could have been rescued, but instead help didn't arrive for more than 2 hours. 1987, 17-year-old Daniel LaPlante killed a nursery school teacher and her 2 kids in Townsend, Massachusetts. But despite conducting a massive manhunt, authorities couldn't find him afterwards. Not long after, a girl who he previously dated opened her closet one night. She found David standing there with a machete, and he was wearing her mother's clothes with makeup smeared across his face. He then tied the family up, but the youngest sibling managed to escape and alert police. But once again, they couldn't find Daniel. 2 weeks later, the family had moved out, but they decided to drive past their home only to find Daniel standing in the window watching them. The police were called once again and Daniel was finally arrested in the home. Upon further inspection, it turned out that he had been living in their home the whole time that they were looking for him. The Scold's Bridle was a device that was used to publicly humiliate women until the 19th century. On the inside, the device had a metal plate that would press down on the tongue and prevent the wearer from speaking. It was placed on women who were said to be troublesome to keep them quiet and prevent them from gossiping. This is a powerful photo of a starving Ugandan boy holding the hand of a missionary in 1980. For many years, the lead singer of Lynyrd Skynyrd told his bandmates that he wouldn't live to the age of 30. His dad reported that even when he was a child, Ronnie would often say, "Daddy, I'll never be 30 years old." When his father asked why he kept saying this, Ronnie would just reply, "Daddy, that's my limit." Sure enough, when he was 29 years old, Ronnie Van Zant died in a plane crash. During a World War II battle in the Pacific, American soldier Thomas Baker was badly wounded but refused to be evacuated. Instead, he ordered his squad to leave him propped up against a tree with nothing but a pistol and 8 bullets. Later, they returned to find Baker dead holding an empty pistol, with 8 dead Japanese soldiers lying around him. 65 years after it crash-landed on a beach in Wales, an American P-38 fighter plane emerged from the sand where it lay buried. After Colonel Robert Gould Shaw was killed in the Second Battle of Fort Wagner in 1863, he was buried in a mass grave as an insult for leading the first all-black regiment in American history. When troops tried to recover his body, his father proudly said, "We will not have his body removed from where it lies, surrounded by his brave and devoted soldiers." Morbid Facts, Part 102. In December of 1980, a 19-year-old girl from Minnesota was involved in a car accident in sub-zero temperatures. After the crash, her car wouldn't start, so she walked towards a friend's house who lived 2 miles away. When she was just 15 feet from her friend's front door, she collapsed. That night, temperatures dropped to -30 degrees Celsius, and no one was around to help her. 6 hours later, she was discovered frozen solid. She was immediately transported to a nearby hospital, but her skin was too hard to even pierce with a needle. Amazingly, she was still alive, but her pulse was only measured at 12 beats per minute. Hoping for a miracle, doctors wrapped her in a heated blanket, and 2 hours later, she regained consciousness. After 49 days in the hospital, she completely recovered and suffered no permanent damage. In 1999, Richard Anthony Jones was convicted of a felony even though he had a strong alibi. He spent 17 years in prison until authorities found his doppelganger living in the same town with the same first name. This is a photo of mobsters hiding their faces from the media during Al Capone's trial in 1931. In 2014, a man from Queens, New York spent 5 months in prison, unaware that his bail was only $2. In the year 2000, 6-year-old Diedrich Owens brought a gun to school and shot and killed 6-year-old Kayla Rowland after she refused to kiss him. Because of his age, he couldn't be legally prosecuted, and he remains the youngest school shooter to date. In 1999, the Davises had to give up their pet chimpanzee Mo after it bit off the finger of a woman who was visiting their California home. He was placed in a monkey sanctuary called Animal Haven Ranch. On Mo's 39th birthday, the couple visited him with a cake when 2 other chimps escaped from their enclosures. They approached the couple and started attacking them for not giving them cake too. Chimpanzees are twice as strong as humans and have no limits for savagery. They have also been known to attack body parts that humans need for survival. So acting accordingly, they ripped off the husband's face and bit off his fingers as well as his floppy trouser snake. The man was conscious during the whole attack and managed to survive after dozens of surgeries. Shortly afterwards, Mo escaped from the sanctuary and was never seen again. Weird Movie Facts, Part 5. Tim Burton is often inspired by his childhood artwork, which is when he developed his unique style. Many of his characters are based on drawings he did as a child, including Edward Scissorhands and Frankenweenie. In October of 1994, the movies Jurassic Park, Shawshank Redemption, Pulp Fiction, and Forrest Gump were all in theaters at the same time. When he was 37 years old, legendary actor Jack Nicholson found out that his sister was actually his mother. Tom Hanks intentionally gained 50 pounds to film the first half of Castaway. He then took a year off to lose weight and grow out his hair before filming the second half. During the break, the director and most of the crew went on to film the movie What Lies Beneath. In 1986, a 5-year-old boy fell into a gorilla enclosure at the Jersey Zoo and lost consciousness. But a male gorilla named Jumbo stood between the boy and the other gorillas in a protective gesture. He even stroked the boy's back to comfort him until he was rescued. This incident helped create a positive public perception of gorillas. Costing $39 million per gallon, scorpion venom is the most expensive liquid in the world. A species of wild mountain goat called the picardo went extinct in the year 2000, but cells from the last animal were frozen in liquid nitrogen and scientists were able to clone it. This made the picardo the first species of animal to become de-extinct. Sadly, the clone died only 7 minutes after being born, also making it the only species to go extinct twice. Teddy Roosevelt's son Quentin fought in World War I as a pilot. He was killed in a dogfight and his plane crashed behind enemy lines. But the Germans gave him a full military burial with honors. They apparently admired the fact that a president's son chose to fight. During World War II, prisoners of war were treated so nicely in Canada that many of them didn't want to leave when they were released. During the same war, Soviet forces tried to train dogs to run under enemy tanks with bombs on their backs. However, this evil plan fortunately ended up failing miserably. Because the dogs had been trained using Soviet tanks, when it came to the real battlefield, many dogs ended up running under friendly Soviet tanks, blowing them up instead. Morbid Facts, Part 99. A few days before he was assassinated, President Lincoln told several people about a dream he had. In the dream, Lincoln saw a soldier standing beside a casket, and he could also hear people weeping. Still dreaming, Lincoln asked the soldier, "Who's dead in the White House?" The soldier turned to him slowly and replied, "The president." In the late 1980s, a woman went on a vacation getaway where singles could meet other singles. She quickly thought she had met the man of her dreams and decided to sleep with him that night. When she woke up in the hotel room the next morning, the man was gone and there was a small wooden coffin on the table next to her. Inside was a note that read, "You are now HIV positive. Welcome to the world of AIDS." Morbid Facts, Part 98. In 1984, singer Marvin Gaye was shot and killed by his own father on the day before his birthday. He used a gun that Marvin had gifted him despite their sour relationship. Marvin was said to be suicidal at the time, so he hit his father during an altercation. His father always said that if any of his kids tried to hit him, he would kill them. He shot Marvin once in the chest and he was dead. When the first Star Wars movie premiered in 1977, France was still executing criminals with the guillotine. In 1967, 15-year-old James Gordon Wolcott shot and killed his mother, father, and sister after sniffing airplane glue. Today, he's an award-winning psychology professor and the head of the behavioral science department at a university in Illinois. Morbid Facts, Part 97. This is a photo of Emmett Till's killers smiling after being acquitted of the brutal murder in 1955. Protected against double jeopardy, the next year the two men publicly admitted that they did indeed kill the 14-year-old boy. Princess Qajar of Persia was a national symbol of beauty in the early 1900s. It is said that more than 10 young men committed suicide because she rejected them. A researcher once played an audio recording of an elephant that had died to its herd. They went wild looking for him, and the elephant's daughter called for days afterward. Dr. Barkhad Abdi only received $65,000 for his award-winning role in the movie Captain Phillips. After production, he returned to selling mobile phones at his brother's shop in a Minneapolis mall. Dwayne Johnson's beard in the movie Hercules was made out of the testicle hair of a yak. Actress Tammy Lynn Leppert, who played a small role in the movie Scarface, disappeared soon after filming. She hasn't been seen nor heard from since 1983, when she was only 18 years old. Paranormal Activity had a budget of only $15,000 but made nearly $200 million at the box office. During the first screening, people started walking out, and studio executives thought that the movie was bombing. They later learned that the viewers were leaving because they were too scared to continue watching. Coconut crabs have a great sense of smell and will travel in packs to find food. They'll eat virtually anything and are basically the raccoons of the Indo-Pacific Islands. A Kansas homeowner turned on his sprinklers before leaving to escape a wildfire. He returned to find his home completely intact while everything around it had burnt to the ground. In the 1950s, a family from Texas had a pet lion named Blondie. They never had a single incident with her, and she died of old age as a beloved member of the family. A Colombian woman was raised by monkeys after being kidnapped and abandoned in the jungle as a child. She spent 5 years living with a colony of capuchin monkeys before being rescued by hunters. When she was found, she didn't know how to cooperate with other humans. During World War II, JFK was stranded in the Solomon Islands and ended up carving a message into a coconut. A native islander delivered it to the closest US military base and saved his life. When he became president, Kennedy used the coconut as a paperweight on his desk in the Oval Office. This is a 1942 photo of Japanese troops using prisoners of war for target practice. During World War II, a German pilot spotted an American pilot's crippled plane in the sky. He noticed that the gunner was dead, the crew was injured, and that they didn't pose any threat. So instead of destroying the plane, he led it to safety and spared the men's lives. 40 years later, the two pilots reunited and became fishing buddies. In 2013, a 5-year-old girl was kidnapped out of her driveway in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. But 15-year-old Tamar Boggs chased the car for 20 minutes until the kidnapper released the child. Iceland is so safe that parents routinely leave their babies outside to nap in their strollers while they run errands. This is a photo of Kwame Ajamu being told by a judge that he is a free man after being falsely imprisoned for 27 years. Future biotechnology could make prisoners feel as though they're serving a 1,000-year sentence in a matter of hours. Drugs and electronics could be developed to distort prisoners' minds into thinking that time was passing more slowly. Joe DiMaggio was so devastated when Marilyn Monroe died that he brought flowers to her grave 3 times a week for more than 20 years. He never remarried, and his last words were, "I'll finally get to see Marilyn." The largest organism in the world is a giant mushroom in Oregon's Malheur National Forest. Its root system is the size of 1,500 football fields, and it might be as much as 8,000 years old. The Costa Rican glass frog has transparent skin, allowing you to see its organ structure. A bite from the Brazilian wandering spider can cause men to have an erection lasting longer than 4 hours. There have been no recorded fatal attacks of wild orcas on humans. In 2005, a 12-year-old boy in Alaska was bumped by a killer whale while splashing in 4 feet of water. The boy was likely mistaken for a seal, and the bump was an aborted attack once the whale realized its mistake. All 4 times that humans have been killed by orcas were in captivity. Before making his name in Hollywood, Rob Riggle served in the U.S. Marine Corps for 23 years. He received several awards and commendations for his service in Kosovo, Afghanistan, and Liberia. This is how enemy aircraft was detected before the invention of radar. During World War II, there was a Soviet woman whose husband was killed by the Nazis. To avenge her husband's death, the woman sold all of her possessions and bought a tank, which she nicknamed the Fighting Girlfriend. With permission from the Soviet Union, she hunted down Nazis with her own tank. A woman from Edinburgh, Scotland thought that her frequent nosebleeds were caused by a motorcycle accident. But one day she felt something poking out of her nose while she was taking a shower, and she found the culprit. A 3-inch long leech had been living in her nostril for more than a month. President FDR was having a portrait painted of himself by a watercolor artist on April 12, 1945. But he had been complaining about a headache and suddenly collapsed before the painting was finished. The president had suffered a stroke and died later that day. The unfinished portrait captures his final waking moments. In 1996, 14-year-old Barry Lukaitis opened fire on his high school algebra class in Washington State. He killed 2 fellow students and the teacher. As his classmates were panicking, he was quoted saying, "This sure beats the hell out of algebra, doesn't it?" He is currently serving out a 189-year prison sentence for the murders. The Dutch police once caught some cannabis growers because their house was the only one on the street without snow on the roof. Since she was a little girl, Jewel Shooping wanted to be blind. So in 2006, she poured drain cleaner into her eyes and blinded herself. She says that she is happier than ever after fulfilling her lifelong wish. Less than 24 hours after you die, your pet cat will start eating your face. Charlie No Face was an urban legend in Pennsylvania who used to walk along the side of highways at night. In reality, he was a man named Raymond Robinson who was left badly disfigured after a childhood electrocution accident. He only went out at night so his face wouldn't scare people, and he was said to be a friendly and well-liked man. Delphine LaLaurie was a 19th century socialite who lived in New Orleans. She owned many slaves, but was known for acting very politely towards them in public. But in 1834, her true evil side was exposed when her house caught on fire. The fire was set by her cook, who was chained to the stove and attempted to burn herself to death. It prompted a group of men to investigate LaLaurie's attic, where they discovered a scene of absolute horror. The room was full of bound slaves who had been tortured so badly that most of the men vomited. Amongst other atrocities, some of the victims were missing their eyes and had their mouths sewn shut. Madame LaLaurie apparently fled the country and lived out the rest of her days in Paris. In 2007, actor Nicolas Cage purchased her former home for $3.5 million. Bullets fired into the air usually fall back down at terminal velocity. As a result, there have been thousands of deaths due to celebratory gunfire. For example, in 2003, more than 20 people were killed by celebratory gunfire in Iraq following the deaths of Saddam Hussein's 2 sons. Chemical castration is mandatory in Florida and California for pedophiles convicted of their second offense. During a 2019 expedition to the deepest point in the ocean, explorers found a plastic bag and candy wrappers, indicating that plastic pollution hasn't spared even the most remote corners of the ocean. This elderly woman from Brooklyn is a hoarder who also happens to be legally blind. At some point in the 1990s, her son who lived in the house disappeared. In 2016, his fully clothed skeleton was found in a room filled with garbage. She had been living with his corpse for 20 years. These are just some of the reasons why people used to be committed to mental asylums. In 2006, 5-year-old Robert Turner called 911 after his mother collapsed in her bedroom. But the operator hung up after asking him to put an adult on the phone and assuming it was a prank. 3 hours later, he called 911 again and another operator told him to stop prank calling. This time, police were sent to the home where they found that the mother of 10 had died from a heart attack. Weird War Facts, Part 13. Nicknamed White Death, Finnish sniper Simo Häyhä killed over 500 Soviet soldiers during the Winter War. He did it in less than 100 days using nothing but a hunting rifle with no scope. When asked what he felt while killing an enemy soldier, he responded, "The recoil." This was the breastplate of 19-year-old Antoine Frevaux. He was struck and killed by a cannonball while serving under Napoleon Bonaparte during the Battle of Waterloo in 1815. These German prisoners of war were forced to watch a film on the atrocities of the Holocaust. Many of them were outright horrified and even burned their Nazi uniforms after watching the footage. These extraterrestrial rocks were discovered in the sand of the Sahara. Libyan desert glass is one of the rarest minerals on Earth, and it's of unknown origin, since only a celestial impact or a nuclear explosion would have resulted in such a geological anomaly. Pieces of the extremely rare mineral were even found in the tomb of King Tut. This is what Saturn would look like if it were as close to Earth as the Moon. It's been estimated that there are more stars in the universe than there are grains of sand on Earth. But there are more atoms in 1 grain of sand than there are stars in the universe. When Southern California was hit with a massive power outage in 1994, a bunch of LA residents began to call 911 about strange clouds hovering overhead. In reality, they were just seeing the Milky Way for the first time. Infamous streaker Mark Roberts was sponsored by GoldenPalace.com to streak during Super Bowl 38. He was paid $1 million, given front row tickets, and was provided with one of the best defense attorneys in the US. He was able to reduce his charges down to a misdemeanor and a $1,000 fine. Brian Banks spent 6 years in prison before his alleged rape victim admitted that it never happened. This was the moment when he was exonerated. In 2006, 51-year-old Susan Walters was attacked by a hitman that her husband had hired to kill her. After finding out who sent him, she ended up killing him with her bare hands. Lieutenant Colonel A.J. Drexel Biddle was a master in hand-to-hand combat. He used to order his troops to surround him with bayonets before single-handedly disarming each of them without any of his own weapons. This photo of one such demonstration was taken in 1943. Tsar Bomba was the largest bomb ever set off by far. It produced a mushroom cloud 168 times taller than the Empire State Building. Its power output was 1.4% of the sun's, and it sent shockwaves that traveled around the Earth 3 times. After a battle in Vietnam, Master Sergeant Roy Benavidez had 37 puncture wounds, exposed intestines, and a broken jaw. He was pronounced dead until he spit in the face of a doctor who was zipping him up in a body bag. In 2007, the Coble family lost their 2 girls and 1 boy in a horrific car accident. A year later, the mother gave birth to triplets, 2 girls and 1 boy. The reason The Beauty and the Beast was written was to help young girls accept arranged marriages. This woman single-handedly buried and gave funerals to more than 40 gay men at the height of the AIDS epidemic. Many victims were never claimed by their families due to stigmas surrounding the disease. Denver Airport's Blue Mustang sculpture is nicknamed Blucifer because of its glowing red eyes. Just before it was unveiled in 2006, Blue Mustang's artist died after a 9,000-pound piece of the sculpture fell on him, adding credence to the theories that Blucifer is haunted or cursed. In 1963, 2 criminals in Mexico convinced local villagers that they were prophets and demanded worship and tribute. Prostitute Magdalena Solis was paid to imitate an Incan goddess as part of the scam. Suffering from religious delusion, she started to genuinely believe that she was a goddess. She soon took over the cult and started sacrificing her followers and drinking their blood. Horseshoe crabs have been around for 450 million years and have blue blood. Instead of hemoglobin, their blood contains hemocyanin, which gets its blue color from oxygenated copper. Their blood is so valuable to the medical industry that a gallon costs around $60,000. The sting of the tarantula hawk wasp is so unbearable that victims are often advised to lie down and start screaming to avoid further injury. In 2018, Russian scientists collected and analyzed 300 prehistoric worms from Arctic permafrost. After being thawed, 2 of the worms began to move and eat. Both of the worms are estimated to be well over 30,000 years old. This is what the skull of a bone cancer patient looks like. Maggie the Wonder Dog was found pregnant and blinded with 17 gunshot wounds on the streets of Lebanon. Now she's a certified therapy dog and has a large following on Instagram. An Italian company has designed organic burial pods that are completely biodegradable. It will convert the dead into nutrients for trees to grow on. So instead of a graveyard, this will create a sacred forest of new life. Pablo Escobar's nephew still lives in one of the drug lord's apartments in Medellin. He recently found $18 million in cash hidden away in a plastic bag behind a wall. He told Colombian media that a vision told him where to look for the cash. A Russian man who tried to rob a hair salon ended up as the victim when the female shop owner overpowered him. She tied him up naked and used him as a sex slave for several days. Peruvian Mayor Jaime Rolando Urbina Torres broke the nationwide lockdown to go drinking with friends. When authorities attempted to apprehend him, the drunken mayor jumped into an empty coffin that was lying near him and pretended to be dead.